please.
Thank you. Taoiseach, I would ask you to respect this House and respect party leaders in putting questions to you. And unlike the last response from you, I'm asking you to give me a straight answer to a straight question that I'm going to pose. You've said that housing is the #1 crisis facing the people, and young people in particular. And you said anything we can do in terms of housing, we're going to do. One of the things you promised to do, Taoiseach, was deal with cuckoo funds buying up family homes. Your government eventually introduced a 10% stamp duty for the bulk purchase of 10 or more homes. Pascal Donoghue described it as a strong deterrent and said funds that try to get around the measures will be caught and prevented from doing so. That's what the Finance Minister said. But now we learn that what your government is doing is actually quite different. Instead of catching out cuckoo funds trying to evade this measure, you're actually helping them to do so. Cuckoo funds that lease homes back to local authorities will be exempt from the stamp duty increase. Now, this government is renowned for saying one thing and doing something else. But this U-turn can only be described as brazen and downright dishonest. Back in May, Taoiseach, just 2 months ago, you told my colleague Catherine Murphy that you didn't agree with local authorities entering long-term leasing deals. You said no local authority should be on the other side of this, engaging in a long lease with these institutional investors. Later that month, you were clear that long-term leasing is bad value, as you called it, and you said, that is my view and I continue to make that clear. You haven't done a very good job of making it clear, Taoiseach, given your own housing minister has quietly submitted an amendment to a finance bill which will actually incentivise cuckoo funds to swoop in, purchase homes from underneath the noses of first-time buyers and then lease them back to the state. The measures you introduced to limit the activity of cuckoo funds in the residential property market were the bare minimum that was required. You didn't even bother to include apartments. Now we learn that even the bare minimum has been diluted, that the promises you made to the people to do something about the activity of these funds are worthless. Fundamentally, Taoiseach, your government cannot be trusted. Instead of helping young people trying to buy a home, you prefer to help the vultures seeking to profiteer on their misery. Taoiseach, my questions are, and I'm asking you to show some respect and answer this specific question. Do you think that long-term leasing is unacceptable and bad value? Is that still your view? And if not, when did you change your mind? And why should anyone trust your government to solve the housing crisis when you can't even be trusted not to amend your own reforms?
Taoiseach, please.
Well, first of all, Deputy, I always respect the other opposition leaders in terms of the questions that they put, but I always reserve the right to respond robustly. And again, the key point I have said, and when you see the Housing for All strategy, you will see the point I'm making, which will cover the housing policy of government for the next 5 years. And that will make it very clear that the focus will be on building houses, owning houses. I will deal with it, but sorry, I'm entitled to reply and not to have this constant heckling, which seems to become a feature. Now, if Deputy Shortall wants me to respect leaders, I think reciprocity is called for. And I'm simply making the point that when Housing for All is published, it will reflect my views in respect of what the optimal way forward for local authorities is, which I do believe, and the best value for money is for local authorities to buy houses and to own houses. That is my view, and that's a view that will be reflected in the Housing for All strategy. Okay? Now, in that commentary that I said in the Dáil, I also said it has limited use. Now, there has been leasing built up before I came into office, and it does have some limited use in certain circumstances in terms of getting people who need emergency social housing housed. And in fact, we've had a 48% reduction, for example, in family homelessness, some of which was facilitated through leasing and through actions taken by Dublin City Council, of which your party has members on. Now, that's exactly what I said last week, or last month, in the Dáil in respect of this. But leasing does not represent in any shape or form the core policy platform of this government in respect of social housing. Can I make that very clear? It does not represent the core policy platform in terms of social housing. Direct bills will, both by local authorities and by approved housing bodies. And in addition to that, affordable housing to be facilitated by local authorities as well, and the Land Development Agency. Legislation which is going through the House hopefully will be passed before the summer recess, which will enable it to put on a statutory basis to get houses built. And again, you are distorting the government's response by focusing in on one single amendment tomorrow evening, as if that constitutes the entirety of government policy, which of course it does not. It does not constitute it. You are saying that. You're implying that. That's exactly what you have been doing.
Just answer the question.
That's what you've been doing, and you've been trying to undermine government policy, because the bottom line is you don't know where your own policy is in the end of the day. We are clear. We have a suite of measures. The largest social housing programme in the history of the state will be part of that the social housing for all strategy, which will involve direct build and building up the social housing stock of the local authorities and approved housing bodies, building affordable homes, which I think is a critical need right now, developing cost rental,
Thank you, Taoiseach.
which I think is extremely important, and getting homelessness down.
Deputy Shortall.
Thanks to the excellent work that the Business Post has done on this, we know that one industry source has said that social housing lease deals are like government bonds on steroids. And that's what you're facilitating, Taoiseach. And you haven't answered the specific question I asked. You're obfuscating. Taoiseach, I'm putting it to you. If your word means anything, will you withdraw the amendment due to be taken tomorrow evening and ensure that first-time buyers have at least a fighting chance in buying a home for themselves? Withdraw this amendment, do the right thing, stick to your word, Taoiseach, and let us trust you on that.
Thank you, Deputy Shortall. Taoiseach.
First-time buyers, they won't be buying social housing. First-time buyers will be assisted. The first-time buyers will be assisted by a very comprehensive range of measures in housing for all, but also in terms of the Help to Buy scheme,
cuckoo funds
and
are
in terms of the shared equity scheme. I get what you're talking about, but the point I'm making is this: we will be doing more to incentivise first-time buyers. I mean, you opposed, well, certainly the party opposite opposed, the 22,000 people who gained from helping to buy. That is helping first-time buyers, and we will be building far more affordable housing through the Land Development Agency, which is going through the House.
And now you're doing the opposite.
Is this regular that heckling is facilitated?
Kind of having a cross
it's going on a
debate there between the two of you.
Point of order, if
the remarks came through the chair, it would be easier for me to manage.
Through the chair, Ceann now it's been remarked to me for quite some time. This is a growing trend, and it's been facilitated, which I don't think is what was agreed at leaders, and certainly not my understanding of leaders. Because my understanding was, I
would say to members, Taoiseach, is that if everybody addressed the remarks through the chair, then we would have less of this going on, and I would be in a better position to deal with it. But if people want to talk directly one-to-one to each other, it's rather difficult to deal with.
I don't accept that, Ceann.
We're finished on this question, are we?